Well, hello everybody, and welcome to yet another sizzling edition, as I call it, of the Inworld Review. Today is the 15th of June of the grand old year 2014. You see, I'm getting there slowly but surely. Not as antiquated as I may seem. Anyway, this is the Inworld Review. We're broadcasting live from Chilbone Second Life, and we're brought to you in association with AView TV. And replays of this show are also available on slartist.com. And if you're actually watching us live, you would have seen a few intro videos, which included a nice advert with a voiceover by Rise and Fall. Great stuff that was. We also delayed the live start a bit to show you a new machinima that literally just appeared a couple of hours ago. And I really have to apologize. I've forgotten what the machinima maker's name was. He's somebody who should be really familiar. But it was about homelessness in India, and it's sort of a mixed reality thing featuring real world footage from India and machinima created in Second Life. So that was very impressive. And we've actually just watched an intro advert, as it were, for the OpenSim community conference, which is coming up in November. And we had planned to bring you a little bit more on that later. However, the person who's meant to be here isn't for one reason or another. So maybe they'll be joining us later. I'm not quite sure at the moment. Anyway, as far as the headlines are concerned, I have a few things. The biggest event, real world event, as it were, in this week has been E3, which is like Electronic Entertainment Expo over in America. And I have one link over, which is actually from Reuters. Actually, it's Reuters Canada, the one that's open for me. I'll copy the link and arrange to get it through to the channel chat here. If I can. I'm sure I can. Distract me. Anyway, the headline here is that E3 signs are that virtual reality's time may finally be coming. Now, as you might expect from Reuters, this article has been rehashed by about every newspaper under the sun, because Reuters do tend to source the content for a lot of other media. But it's quite interesting to sort of see coverage in this sort of space. Basically, it's all the fever, of course, that's grown out from Oculus and Project Morpheus and various things like that. So the other interesting thing is we've had a couple of new pie chart jobs from K0 this week, but he's also just released, and again I'm going to put the link of that coming through, The Evolution of Virtual Worlds Part 4. And in this chapter they're dealing with branded virtual realities. And that's the K0 link there. Right, the Hyergrid business I will come to in a minute. Living in the Modern World. This is Nara Pay's blog. She actually has a piece, appropriately really, on the US Army targeting Second Life and virtual worlds for healthcare. Again, the link for that is coming through, hopefully. And something that was rather interesting this week is that I actually went into Moses, the Moses grid, which of course is a grid that is basically a public outreach grid for the American Army. And I was in there actually to, principally to attend a talk by Philip Rosedale about High-Fidelity. But as it transpired, I was able to film it offline too and get it turned over pretty darn quick, if I may say so. So it was up within about half an hour. That particular talk is going to be following this program, and that indeed will be followed by yet another program filmed by Petlove here concerning virtual ability recently. So a connection with the US Army there too. Now, a couple of other pieces I have here. Yes. This is a post that I almost misread as virtual reality for pets with PS PTSD, but this is actually for veterans too. So
There is such a thing. There are wounded warrior canines. I just read an article about it at the laundromat the other day. So, not to interrupt, but
Yes,
that was not totally inappropriate. It's true.
Animals, even dogs, dumb as they are, do sort of suffer from this. And poor cats must, they're
so sensitive.
Yeah.
Well, the dogs in particular, where PTSD comes into play, are the service dogs who, for example, cadaver dogs that they use for finding dead bodies in earthquakes and major disasters. Those are ones that, in the recent mudslides here in Washington State, they had a number of cadaver dogs they were using, and the conditions and everything were such that they would have to take the dogs out and give them serious breaks, like for some days between sessions, just because it was so. Anyway.
It's stressful.
You,
yeah.
Well,
we've distracted you.
Good job.
I have just,
Sorry.
I've just copied the link over anyway. The headline is Virtual Reality for Vets. I think well, it means veterans, but vets and pets and veterans, you get them confused a bit, don't you? With PTSD, recreates the smell, sounds, and feelings of an IED. Come again, please. Basically, this is about a project at the University of Southern California's Institute for Creative Technology. And they have generated a virtual IED explosion and have been studying it, of course. All good stuff. One that's peculiar to the UK here, actually, is... I don't know how many of our foreign listeners have ever heard of Longleat. It's a big safari park down in Wiltshire, which I know very well indeed, in fact. And next door to it, there's one of these holiday sort of encampments under a sort of enclosed roof, and they're called centre parks. You go into this sort of forest, and then there's a bit of it cleared inside, and they have this... Oh, I'm sorry. Actually, the particular centre parks in question is at Woburn Forest in Bedfordshire, so it's not the one down in Longleat at all. But anyway, the news is that centre parks are using virtual reality in a new out-of-home campaign. So they're advertising your holiday in this I'm not sure whether a holiday park company. Yes, not quite what I would call a resort. But anyway, they've been staging a takeover of Waterloo Station in London and using virtual reality technology and digital screens to promote their venue. So if you're interested in that, I will slip the link over into chat here for that one too. And right. As I said, this talk with Philip Rosedale, which I found very enlightening, took place a couple of days ago. And Maria at Hyergrid Business, who we'll be talking to in just a second, has many links up this week, as you might expect. We'll be going through them. But she actually has, and I'm sure we're going to be going through it today, carefully watched my video and published a post saying how High-Fidelity will make money while giving away software, and goes very adequately into all the things Philip told us. So I think that will be the highlight of our discussion today. It was actually quite interesting that in the process of his talk, for the first time I noticed Philip had checked, if that's the word, both OpenSim and the Hypergrid. He referenced them while talking, showing that he's pretty abreast of what's going on that front too, and of course the similarities between that and the system he's working on. So anyway, that is just my brief headlines. There are plenty more, of course, and I haven't even opened the Second Life feed. Whether I can get round to it is debatable. But for Second Life stuff, which she always has quite a lot of, and anything else besides, I'm going to hand the mic to Tara for her take on the week. So over to you, Tara.
Thank you, Mal, and greetings from the Pacific Northwest, where it is the Pacific Northwest at the moment, but that's normal. It's June, after all. We haven't gotten into our dry season, which actually starts the 4th of July, or rather the 5th of July is kind of the tradition that the 4th of July sometimes we get rained on anyway. Yes. Well, this week I've been beavering away at the SL11B sim, where I have a patch and building a secret garden. The SL11B opens next Saturday, I think it is. It closes. Builders have to have their stuff finished by Wednesday. It's when we get kicked out until things actually open. I was interested in discovering that actually this year's birthday celebration has only half as many sims as it had last year, which explains why the number of exhibitor applications versus the number of actual slots was rather noticeably out of sync. In other words, there were a whole lot more people applied than got in. So, as far as exhibitors are concerned, but
at least you can get round it a bit quicker. I did a quick fly through.
Yes, well, there is that.
Yesterday, and I think I've seen most of it except the bits that aren't built. You know.
Oh well, I'm sure there's a lot that will materialize in the next 3 days, Mel, because lots of people build offsite and then bring it in and plunk it down
at the last minute.
Yeah. So anyway, so be prepared. You'll have a week of when there'll be lots of things going on, and then the second week you can go visit if you want to take pictures of machinima when it's less crowded and you can see stuff because there aren't events going on. So you've got 2 weeks to see stuff, but only a week when there are various presentations and performances and all that kind of stuff going on. Well, in the RL Sim, the current madness in the foolishness department is over the World Cup in Brazil, and unfortunately, the World Cup has taken its toll in Second Life. Kitty cats have a special kitty cat that is being randomly appearing when people have a new kitty cat box appear. In other words, in their breeders. You only get one if you get one at all. That is a World Cup kitty cat, and I can report that as of this morning, I have a World Cup kitty cat still in its box, and it's not a petite, it's a toy. It's a tiny one. Which makes it a little even more special. They're very cute, but even cuter, they have taken over the middle part of the store, the kitty cat's main store, and set up a soccer field with kitty cats playing soccer, which is quite cute. If you're into kitty cats, it's worth a visit to the store to watch the kitty cats in their little uniforms running up and down the field.
I want to see that.
Yeah,
sounds cute.
It's fun.
It sounds cute.
Yeah, it's very cute. Yeah, I couldn't tell if they've actually got any different animations than they normally do. I mean, there's a few, like there's goalies at both ends that are posed, but anyway, it's awfully cute. Congratulations to Draxter Dupre for his win this week at the New Media Film Festival for Best Machinima for Episode 2 of his World Makers series about Second Life folks, the one he did on Virtual Berlin. So that's this is, I think, the 6th year of the New Media Film Festival. I'm not sure if there was a machinima category before this year. I poked around in their website looking to see if they had lists of previous winners, and they were nowhere to be found. And I didn't have the time or the inclination to go dig further into the Wayback Machine or other resources to try to find that information. But anyway, congrats very much are in order to Draxter for that. A fun event. It's always fun when you run into something that sounds just grand, that is actually on its second round or it's being done again. And this is the case for one that I spotted in an RPA's blog. Following a successful inaugural event in 2013, Art in Hats returns to Second Life in a new venue and more design and images.
Oh boy.
It's taking place through the end of July, and it's at Boutou, B-O-U-T-O-U sim. It focuses on hats both as a statement of fashion and art. The exhibition curators paired designers with Second Life photographers who produced portraits and images of the hats being worn. Result is the stunning display of art and fashion, all of which is available for sale. And there are, at least some of the hats have demos available, so if you want to prefer a try before buying, you can do so. And at the center of the installation, there's a little gift and freebies area. And as well as the main exhibition, they're having a fashion show on June 21st and a special charity auction event being held throughout what's wrong with that sentence?
Something.
Yeah, being held in. I guess it must be a silent auction setup until the event closes on July 31st, featuring a number of unique hats being auctioned off in support of Feed a Smile. So that must be a silent auction if it's running until it's over. Anyway. Feed a Smile is the beneficiary of the silent auction on that. That sounds like great fun to go check out. So
yeah, I've been posting a few links to that actually because I do like the hats. I have a huge collection of Inworld hats, none of which I ever wear because they never fit on my wigs.
Well, you know,
I do love collecting them.
You know, the intrepid Hunt Buzz reporter Rosemary Mendelson is a creator of hats, and she was invited to participate in that this year. She was really thrilled. So we highly recommend it.
Yeah. Well, I suspect it is one of those that we're seeing. There is some truly fabulous stuff that gets done in hats in Second Life. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially top hats with a lot of room on them for accoutrements.
For critters to run around.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Last week we mentioned that Emily Short of Versu had worked out an agreement with Linden Lab and being able to use Versu external to Second Life or anyway to be able to do stuff with it again after a bad word a negative word a few months ago when it looked like she wasn't, but now she is. And the Blood and Laurels is now out and available in the App Store. But a couple of really interesting items. There was Draxter again released on Friday an extended interview in his radio show series podcast with Emily. That obviously was done after the good word that they were able to continue doing so. But what caught my attention in what NRP had to say was the fact that Versu, as it's been released for Blood and Laurels, is somewhat different than the Versu that first appeared under the Labs banner. Apparently, the first Versu was more an app into which interactive fiction games could be plugged. Versu, as you'll see it in Blood and Laurels, is now geared more towards developing self-contained titles. So that I thought was rather interesting. The question was unclear about how much of that would be available to other people to plug interactive stories in. But I found it quite fascinating to note that Blood and Laurels amounts to some 240,000 words of interactive content, but only about 7% of that is liable to be encountered in a single play, which gives you an idea of how many times you could go through the story making different choices along the way and encounter completely different storylines.
That is so cool.
Yes.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Really, really amazing. Anyway, let's see. There's a few items in the Eat Your Vegetables, a couple of items in the Eat Your Vegetables segment. There's now a project viewer for Snowstorm code contributions. Say that 3 times fast. This week, and a couple of things that caught at least a couple of things of note. First off, one of the things it includes is a new panel allowing setting of default permissions on creation of objects, covering everything in one window. So objects, uploads, scripts, note cards, gestures, wearables, all in one window. So rather than having to click on each individual thing and invariably missing something, it can all be done in one spot, which is very cool. That's in a project viewer. Eventually, will turn up in the main Second Life viewer, and hopefully turn up in third-party viewers not long thereafter, if not at the same time or whatever. There's couple of other things in it of note for developers. It will obtain LSL syntax information from the simulator, so it's always up to date, which can eliminate issues with manually updating within the viewer and ending up out of sync with the simulators as new syntax and functions, etc., are added. So basically it says the scripts and things are going to go out and look at what's on the simulator, on the servers, on the sim servers, and update themselves automatically instead of you having to do things. So that could help in some of the issues that come up. And there's also an interesting item here that in the project viewer that will this particular one will block installation of old and unpatched versions of Windows. This will cause viewers Windows installer the viewers window installers to check if it's Windows XP that the system has the latest patches available, and if it does not on an XP system, it will not let you install it. So if you're still running XP, be warned, you best have all the patches that Microsoft has made available. If you're running Windows Vista 7, then it will check, it will warn you if you don't have all the relevant patches, but installation of the Second Life viewer will not be blocked. Now this is stuff that's being tested in a project viewer, so if you're using the main viewer and it's not the project viewer, then you're not going to see that. But just be warned, that's coming down the pike.
So what they're doing is throwing in more monkey wrenches to hinder people getting into Second Life.
Well, yes,
Brilliant.
Also
Brilliant.
They're protecting Second Life from the issues they're concerned about are bug patches.
Okay.
Or things, bug patches and security fixes. I don't know if you've ever looked at the list of stuff that typically comes out in Patch Tuesday from Microsoft.
Yeah.
But typically there'll be about 16 files that are security patches and 2 that are something else.
Yes. And those patches. One of the most interesting things in the Philip talk actually was he was going through protocols and everything, saying he wants it to be usable absolutely everywhere and the web version in every web browser under the sun, etc. And he said, except possibly IE, which I thought was rather amusing. It's out on such a limb; it's almost not worth considering.
Yeah,
well, it's out
crazy.
on a limb, yes, but it's still Internet Explorer is still such a dominant browser as far as enterprise use and corporation use that you can't ignore it if you're interested in getting inside those particular firewalls. Anyway, another little interesting item. There's a server beta meeting every week, and this past week they were doing some griefer tests. Maestro Linden provided some prims that have been specially designed to stress test using materials functions in LSL functions for materials. In other words, the things that enable you to do things that are truly shiny and bumpy and all that. The test was successful. It didn't bring anything to its knees, but they obviously are going to continue watching. Basically, scripted materials controls are unlikely to be a major source of griefing, and sims seem to handle excessive use of script materials in its stride, and impacts on the viewer frame rate can be handled by using updates to objects to block the offending object if you're in a situation where somebody's attempting to do that. So that's very nice, because I don't know about anybody else, but some of the griefer things with screaming boxes, if you happen to get into the sim where one was located, it would bring you to your knees. If you were trying to find the base to be able to file a griefer report, sometimes I can recall several times that I had to back out and get into a neighboring sim and then zoom in.
Those things are deadly. They're really annoying. I think we lost Tara's voice.
Yes, I seem to.
Did you lose my voice?
We lost you for a few minutes, half
Yeah.
a minute.
And,
Yeah.
okay, well, I was just wrapping up on the vegetables. That's why. Too much
Thank
broccoli
you.
today. Anyway, okay. Well, my last little item here today is a little show and tell. Always have to do a little show and tell if I find some fun stuff. And as promised last week, today's features items from a treehouse gotcha. And this was the gotcha that I was particularly interested in when I saw the pictures, and so it was one I was watching for. And this was one of the places I mentioned last week also that.
Oh dear! I think
She's
we lost
cutting
our-
out. Whoops. Darn.
We are actually seeing. This is Tara's little building. It's right behind our stage. Oh, here's Tara again.
Yeah. It's right next to the stage sim here, or the stage.
You might want to
parcel.
jump to the 3 parts before your voice cuts out again.
Oh yeah, so 3 parts. Yeah, three pieces here. The main treehouse is a rare, and then there's a zip line attachment, and you can run down the zip line if you click on it. There's a variety of poses around, and then around on the back, I've got attached the third rare, which is a slide set that attaches on the back of the back here. It's totally cute. It has a bunch of poses. On the front, I also there's some other gotcha items, sleeping bags. There's a tin can telephone on the front that was another little item from there. And there's some additional things that I didn't get because I quit while I was ahead. I figured, well, I've got the big stuff. I can come back and pick up the little things later. One thing of note. The designer, by the way, is Henry Haystack, and his store is Snips and Snails. And my bit of warning is this has obviously been designed thinking in terms of kid-sized avatars. Some of the poses, when you take a grown-up sized avatar, you have to do a little adjusting to get yourself so you're not poking out in funny ways from the architecture. Anyway, just very cute.
That's great.
I can't find the phone. Where's the tin can phone?
Oh, it's tin can phone. It's next to the sleeping bag that's on the platform.
On the porch? Okay, hold on here.
Yeah, it's
Who says we don't have action filming in our
That's right.
This is great.
yeah,
Oh, there they are. I see them.
yeah. It's just, as I say, it's
Oops.
just very fun to.
Cute. Oh, sorry. All right, a little
It is
closer.
50 lindens a pice or 75. I can't remember which. Yes, there's a tin can.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Very nice. I need one.
Yeah. So and the sleeping bags have poses too. So each of those 3 pieces has its own pose set, So feel free to stop by Northwest Chilbo and check it out if you're cruising around the sim and looking for.
I'll bring my tiny over.
Yeah, bring your tiny. Yeah, get out your tiny avatar. Anyway, I think that's all I have. So
I'm just thinking this is like happy hunting for the camera, searching for the tin cans.
We'll talk about the shooting style of Happy Hunting sometime if you'd like. I used to search everything out, and now we have a totally different shooting style.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's fun.
I quite like the voiceover thing. Just take a camera in somewhere and try and find what you're looking for,
And talk about
the
it.
camera pans around. The voiceover says, "Oh, maybe to the left, maybe to the right."
It's so real.
Yes, I know. It's got an immediacy about it that is wonderful. Okay, before I move on, it's a few minutes ago now, but Lapaisian is in our chat room on the channel, and he did actually point out that the Machinima Expo and the New Media Film thing only got together this year, so that, Tara, explains why you couldn't find any back footage on the Machinima side.
Well, it wasn't the Machinima side. It was the It was the New Media Film Festival Awards. I was looking
Yeah.
for prior years because what I was
Oh,
curious is if this was the first year for a Machinima Award or if it had been given in previous years.
Yeah, no, this is the first
And that's-
year Machinima Expo got together with them for Machinima section.
Okay.
That's how I take it from Lap's comments.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, one little story I missed here, and I'm going to do my duty and paste the link in here, from TheVerge.com actually, was Bloomberg, newspaper people, financial reports really, have shown off a virtual news terminal in Oculus Rift, which I thought was rather interesting. This is the sort of thing you go out to, I gather. You go to a booth and put the Oculus Rift on, and they give you a virtual terminal to give you access to news stories and stuff like that. So you might want to check that out a bit more.
I think the goal of that is to increase the number of screens that traders have. I used to cover Wall Street, and when a trader works, if you go into one of those trading rooms, they replace. This is really funny. It used to be that you would pass around little slips of paper on the trading floor, like actual slips of paper. The trading floor would be covered. It was like confetti, covered like a foot deep in it. So they switched to electronic trading, and now everybody has a desk with all these screens around them. And if you go into one of these offices, every desk has like 4 or 8 screens there in front of them. And there's only so many screens you can put on a desk that a person can actually see. So what they've done is they've created these virtual desks where it's like a miniature war room just for you, where wherever you look, there's a screen. And it's like you're in this like a science fiction kind of thing where you have these screens all around you. And so checking something out, all you have to do is glance over from one screen to another. You don't have to switch screens. Which, when you're talking with microsecond kind of trading opportunities, this is really important. You don't want people to get lost in their screens, right? Like if you have like 50 tabs up on your browser, you forget which one is where, right?
Yeah.
So for traders, this is really important. That they want all this stuff to be updated in real time. So what they also have is they have color coding on the screens. If something's going really, really well, it might, for example, flash in green. And when something's going really, really badly, it might flash in red. So you want to be able to have this overview of how things are going and to be able to instantly see if something is red or turning green. And if you have all these screens out in front of you, you can instantly grasp it because, your eyes are sensitive to, all of a sudden something flashes red over here or something flashes green over there.
And the real-time reaction, presumably turning your head left and right, simply switches you to the virtual equivalent of a new monitor, so you can much faster and you
just glance your eyes over from to these various screens. So very, very easy. And they can put in a whole bunch more real estate. And of course, they can update this very easily without having to update your hardware. Except, of course, they have to update your virtual reality hardware. But instead of physically updating, the screens, they will physically just update this one device that you have on you.
Yeah.
So I guess that would make a little bit. I could see that making a little bit of sense. And Wall Street tends to be on the cutting edge of a lot of these things. So this is very interesting. And another side effect of this is that once they've moved to these kind of 3D screens, they can also start experimenting with 3D data visualization. Because right now on a 2D screen, there's only so much you can do with it. But if you have an immersive 3D environment where you can point your finger to something and have it expand in front of you and, the Minority Report kind of interface, you could start doing some interesting things with data. And for people for whom a split-second improvement in something or a slightly 1% better understanding of something could result in extra millions or billions of income. So this is something that they're very, very much aware of. Wall Street has a lot of money to spend in technology. They They are extremely risk averse. They don't want to create anything that loses the money, but at the same time, they're extremely anxious to find anything that will give them an edge over their competition. And this is the kind of thing that's not particularly risky. You know, they're not adding any risk vectors here. It's a new way of visualizing data. So it might be interesting to see if it catches on. With Bloomberg signing on board, Bloomberg is the major provider of trading terminals. Their big competitors, Reuters. And of course, you read that Reuters story just now. So clearly, Reuters is aware of virtual reality.
Yes, from their point of view. Yeah, they're all beginning to realise this. See, there's a company in the UK here called Dayton Limited, run by a guy called Dave Burton, and they've worked in OpenSim, but used to be present a lot in Second Life too, and they did have some wonderful data sort of visualizations where you imagine you're looking at a bar chart in a a good old-fashioned bar chart, and simply it can give you certain values, and you can tell the richest company or something by the height of the bar chart. But by simply tilting in 3D that bar chart, it can give you depth information that gives you I don't know, volume of sales as opposed to the actual amounts of sales and things. So you can get whole new perspectives on a single set of data simply by the way you tilt the virtual representation of it. And so I can see that being very practical indeed.
Yep.
So let's go to the other stuff. I was about to hand to you anyway, so I've had to slip in that in. Loads of stuff on your blog this week. I think we'll leave your summary of Philip's thing till near the end. That way we'll be leading into our showing of it after the show, because there was some interesting stuff covered there that I didn't really think had been covered before, to do with the commerce system and copyright protections and things, privacy protections and things. And we have Petlove in back chat screen.
I just want to see if Maria's lips really will work or not, since her close-up's coming. Sorry.
I forgot to push the button.
I figured as much, yeah. Thank you.
It was going off while you were talking, so I was like, well, I don't want my lips moving while I'm not saying anything. I look like a crazy person.
No worse than anything else, don't worry. Better to have them moving.
It's absolutely fine. I can see them moving right now on my monitor.
Yay. Me too.
We're watching Petlove's broadcast, so we're absolutely fine. Okay, so I think interesting things with High-Fidelity, but you've had an awful lot of other stuff up this week, including, of course, stuff that's broken at E3 and all sorts of things. So, I'll let you just go through the list.
So first, I'll start with the breaking news. The report came out this morning about the monthly stats. They come out on or about the 15th of the month, every month, and since 2009. So I take that as an amazing accomplishment. So we have right now around about 45,000 regions total in OpenSim. So it's about twice as many as in Second Life. These are now you got to remember that this is land area, and land is cheap in OpenSim, especially with the new variable regions and mega regions. But this is land that you can use, that you can go out and explore and build on, and this is real. It says cheap land, but it's real land, often with high prim limits as well. The number of active users dropped by 1,200 this month on the top 40 grids. And the main reasons are that, first of all, Inworld shut down for the 5th time today.
Yeah.
They were open again briefly this week, bragging about they're now on hypergrid. They now have highly market deliveries. Nothing can keep them down. A little bit of paranoia.
And they've gone again.
And now they're gone
Oh
again.
god, the latest science I'd heard was they were back with the Hyergrid. So
And now they're down.
This is just up and down far too quick for me
What,
to follow.
what I want to know is who are the idiots who haven't already removed anything that they could on any given "we're up again" announcement and cleared out.
Apparently, he has fans. He's a larger-than-life personality, and he has his fans in Brazil. His fans are in Brazil. So, not a lot of choice for...
I know what's happened. They've got distracted by the football.
Oh my god, yes, you're right!
That explains everything.
I'm not a big fan of all this ball kicking stuff, but sort of it is taking over at the moment. So
All right.
I just think they ought to rename it, Yo-Yo Grid.
Ow!
So his idea was, and he does this every time. He's done this 4 times. So at first he starts out trying to run the grid by himself, finds out it's really hard, switches to a hosting provider. After a couple of months, he gets into a dispute with that hosting provider, switches back to running it himself. A short while later, realizes that running a grid yourself, just like running a website yourself, is just one big headache because you have to manage the servers, and servers are like babies. And so he switches to another hosting provider, gets into a dispute with that hosting provider, goes off on his own, finds out that it's. How does he forget how hard it was to do this last time?
It's still not any easier than it was the last time he tried.
I know, yeah. So, and this is exactly what happened. So he started on his own, then he went with Dreamland. Dreamland is an excellent hosting provider. And a disclaimer, they are an advertiser in Hypergrid business, and they do run the Hypergrid grid. And but it's not just me saying that they're an excellent hosting provider. They've got a lot of good customer testimonials.
Yeah, they are. I can tell you that too. When we're looking for providers and things, they're ultimately the place you end up going. To be honest,
they're not the cheapest. They're definitely not the most expensive. They're very solid, mid-priced, and they've got a lot of school customers, corporate customers, plus individual region renters. And they have an excellent control panel that lets you save your inventory, save entire regions, reboot your own regions. The one thing that the control panel does not have is a self-serve ability to rename a region. You have to put in a support ticket for that. I'm sure they'll add it eventually if they haven't yet. But that was the reason why AviWorlds left them the first time, is because although all this other stuff was automated, they had to put in a support ticket to rename regions. So therefore, clearly they could do a better job on their own. So
it's a little bit of cynicism in that remark there, I think.
So instead of just putting in support tickets to rename regions, now they have to, in effect, do everything from scratch themselves, which is, of course, not as easy as... I don't think anybody makes it sound easy. So it's not easy. And so they switched to ZetaMex, which is right now another leading provider. They're another one of our recommended vendors. They're a newer company. They're changing their pricing and offerings quite frequently because they're just kind of getting started. They're a young, kind of fresh startup. But they also have a good reputation, and they have some good customer testimonials out there of people who are happy with their services. So they switched to ZetaMex, and this time they left ZetaMex officially because ZetaMex didn't do enough to protect them from a denial of service attack. Now the thing with denial of service attacks is you block the IP addresses, you roll up new hardware, but at the end of the day, you just have to ride it out. I don't know if you guys heard, but there were a couple of big hits, denial of service attacks against Feedly.
My news workflow was down for about half the week.
Exactly.
When Feedly were hit 3 times.
Feedly went down, and one other big company went down this week.
Evernote.
Evernote, yes. Yeah. So basically, there's really no way to escape this, especially with an interactive site. With a static site, like for example, Hypergrid Business, if somebody launches a denial of service attack to us, we're not even going to notice because everybody sees the same web page. The web page is hosted by a DreamHost, and it's recopied by a company called Cloudflare that puts copies of web pages up in the cloud for free. And if you want premium services, they charge extra for it. But basically, for a static website, not an interactive one, and I don't have any interactivity on Hypergrid Business except for the comments, and those are done by Discus, by somebody else. So if somebody tries to launch an attack against Hypergrid Business, they could have millions, they could have billions of visits to my site, and I'm not going to care. In fact, as I'm concerned, extra traffic. I'm fine with that.
One way to look at it, yeah.
Yeah, and nobody will notice. But for a grid, it requires constant interactivity. Everybody gets a different view. So denial of service attacks are extremely threatening, and they can bring down a grid very quickly. Evernote and Feedly are also very interactive sites. Everybody gets a different view. So they're also very vulnerable to denial of service attacks. I mean, again, everybody is, but interactive sites and grids in particular are very vulnerable. So from what I understand, from what happened, ZetaMax did the best they could. Their hosting company started to complain about, because ZetaMax itself has its servers in a hosted center. They don't physically, have all their servers in their house or in their office. Nobody does these days. You use a data center to manage your servers, and so their data center started complaining about this. So it was actually causing trouble for ZetaMax. So they left. Avnation quit again, and so now they decided to go alone on their own server, and without any of the protections that ZetaMax and the data centers and everyone else has in place to deal with problems and the backups and the denial of service attacks and that kind of thing. And so
it's interesting that Piscean is actually said something in chat here, which actually seems rather interesting, because I think he says if they ever start multitasking the grid instead of unicasting the grid, this will stop. But doesn't if they multicast, that would presumably take away from, to have that individual connection to the world depends on unicasting, doesn't it?
They're just flooding. They're flooding the servers, and it doesn't matter how many streams you've got going. At a certain point, if you've got a zombie bot army sending in millions of requests, it's going to get flooded.
Yeah.
And unless you're sending out the same exact thing to everybody, which you could only do with a static image or maybe a static video.
That mentions SLGo, which of course is that video stream.
It's a video stream.
Version. Yeah.
Now SLGo is going to have the same problem. It's the same susceptibility to DDoS attacks. Now the way you handle it is you identify the pattern that distinguishes the bad requests from the good requests from real people, and you try to funnel the bad requests someplace where they can't do any damage. And this is what ZetaMax is actually building to protect their grids in the future. It's a black box server that captures the stuff from the attackers and leaves the good messaging coming in. Now, it can be tricky to identify which ones are the good ones, which ones are the bad ones. And so it could take time to catch it all, especially if the hackers are fast and kind of keep switching things up. So it becomes a little bit of an arms race. But it is possible to do, and eventually the hackers' botnet will be shut down. So So this is one of those things where you can wait it out because the authorities get involved. The servers that are spewing this stuff out, the zombie servers get identified. Their ISPs get identified. The servers get shut down. So there's a process in place for dealing with this. But but if you have a very fast hacker, it can take a little bit of time to catch up to them.
I must say, the thing with Feedly in the week amazed me. I mean, it wasn't just the inconvenience, and I couldn't understand why they were a target, but they, they were hit. They were down for 24 hours. They got back up, and within minutes, they were hit again in a completely different attack. They fixed that, and then they suffered a third attack as soon as they were back up again.
Right.
It seems to be solved for now, but
Feedly, both Feedly and Evernote are totally harmless companies. They're not political. They're not powerful. They're not like Amazon or something. Why would anybody go after this?
That's what I wondered. Yeah.
I think this comes down to the fact that hackers be crazy.
That's possible.
Spent a chunk of time in the late, but just before the turn of the century, as a web cop. The other thing you have to keep in mind is that you have what are commonly referred to as script
kiddies,
and no sense. To the early part of the summer break in the northern hemisphere, and they tend to be out in droves. And they're just looking for, they're off looking for trouble. And they'll just pick it. It's not
good point.
There's no message other than the fact that we have, too much testosterone.
Yep. Good point.
Okay, no more school holidays from now on.
Excellent point. Yes. So I have a feeling that Avanation was not targeted by anybody. I mean, why would somebody want to actively bring the grid down? All they'd have to do is wait a week or two.
That's mean.
Patience. It's going to go anyway.
Please do not sue me. That was a joke. That was not an actual recommendation to hackers. All right. So what else? That was one thing that happened this month. Another thing that I have no explanation for is that Metropolis lost 700 active users this month. Now that's more than half of its active users. It was for like 1,200. Now it's dropped to around 500 active users. It went from 4th to 7th place on the top 10 most popular grids list. It could be that they have a lot of educational institutions out there. Could be a glitch of some kind. And it was totally out of whack with all the other grids. So it's probably more unless they have an extremely high density of educational institutions on their grid, which is possible. They are a non-profit grid.
I think they do have quite a few. But about how many, I don't know. Yeah.
And Zandramas. Now Zandramas is a commercial grid. They are they were on the top 10 list for the first time last month, and they dropped off again this month. It could be because they had a big anniversary party last month, so they were pretty busy. Could also be, now I didn't see anything posted on their websites or the Twitter feed that they were affected by the denial of service, but they use the same hosting as Inworld. They're on the ZeniMax servers. So they might have had a little bit of peripheral damage there. I don't know. I haven't seen any reports that they did. But they lost of 264 active users. So it was down from 445. So it lost about half of its active users too. So those are the big drops, and that's why we lost over 1,000 active users this month. Is because of those things.
Now, it surprises me too, because Metropolis are one of I just cursory glance at feeds and news and stuff like that, Metropolis seemed to me to have very high visibility compared with a lot of other grids. So it actually seems more surprising, given that visibility that they.
Yes, they're the second. They were the second most popular nonprofit grid after OS Grid. They've fallen this month. They've fallen behind Craft World. One of the reasons they became popular was because of a political issue that they had with OS Grid. And so, as you know, conflict always brings tension. And this conflict told people that there was a Metropolis grid that maybe they didn't know about before, because it's mostly a German language grid. So a lot of the English language speakers may not even have been aware of it. But it is bilingual. There's a lot of English language stuff on there as well. But everybody who had a beef with OS Grid for one reason or another, and OS Grid is a very large grid with volunteer managers, so you're bound to have a certain amount of the population is going to have a beef with them over something at any given point. Those folks went over to Metropolis because the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of attitude. Well, OS Grid management hasn't seemed to have any beefs with its residents lately. So, but that doesn't explain Metropolis's dramatic fall this month. I'm going to say it's either a technical glitch, and I'm sure I'll find out, or it's some kind of educational related thing. And I'm going to be.
I suspect, even going into Second Life, I noticed that, apart from a profusion of people in for the birthday build, it sort of seemed to be less people online. And I suspect, from the Northern Hemisphere point of view, we're getting into that summer lull where people.
It is very definitely cyclical. I checked the numbers for the past 5 years, and there are cyclical dips around the summer and the holidays. Yeah.
So it could just be that.
And that definitely goes back further than the advent of virtual worlds. That's
yeah. People want to be outside instead of sitting behind their computer or sitting behind their Skype.
Starting doing vacations and vacations or someplace.
The iPad, out on the beach with the iPad. Yes.
Yes.
Sign me up.
Something else in your feed there.
I want to get through the statistics news first. Another big statistical news is that Kitely Market also released its numbers, and they've got growth in products, growth in exportables, growth in everything. They've got growth in active users. They were one of the biggest gainers this month. And in fact, they were the biggest gainer this month. One of their merchants, World's End Landscaping and Roleplay, is reporting that they're making more money from their Kitely Market than they are from their Second Life marketplace store. So I thought that was interesting, because you don't usually think of the OpenSim marketplace as being particularly big or profitable, but for some merchants, it is becoming like that. So what else? A little bit of music on the grids. Virtual Highway is going to have a 4th of July celebration. And I've got 18 new grids listed. Ooh. So it's been an exciting little month this month. And so that was that. And so that's it for the stats. And I've got the next thing I wanted to talk about was the Inworld's export permissions.
That's just what I was going to raise. Great. Sounds interesting. Yeah.
So this is interesting because Inworld is a closed commercial grid, and they're the last grid I would have expected to be testing export permissions. So what happened was more than a year ago, last March, Avanation, their second biggest commercial grid at the time, got together with the Singularity viewer people, and they added a 4th permission. So in addition to copy, transfer, and modify, you now have export in that list. So you have 4 permissions total, and you can go into the viewer and you can change that permission, if you're allowed to. And it changes it in the asset database. And if you have that permission set, you can take the content out of the grid, and otherwise you can't. So, for example, many viewers have the ability to let you save objects to your local drive. Like you can export an object in XML or in other formats, or you can export a mesh object if you have the rights to do it. So this would be one of the ways to give people rights to export their objects. And of course, this could also be used for exporting entire regions and inventory files, and for hypergrid travel. So the way Inworld is using it, and they've already rolled it out on their beta grid, and they plan to put it on their whole grid as soon as they have everything tested, is for the viewer downloads. Right now, the way it works is that you can download any full perm item, which is different from the way it works in Second Life. In Second Life, you can only download an item if you are the original creator of every single bit of that object.
Yeah.
Everything. You have to be everything in there. Every script, every tiny little mini prim, every little texture. You have to be the original creator of all of it. Doesn't matter if it's full perm or if it's public domain. They don't care about any of it. All they care about is that you're the original creator of everything.
Yeah.
And the way it works on the open sim grids, and all the viewer devs have pretty much decided to do it this way, is that in open sim, all you have to do is have a full perm item, and then you can download it. So it's more stringent in Second Life than in open sim. And what Kitely wanted was to have it more stringent. They wanted more like the Second Life model than the open sim model. But going around to all the viewer developers and having them build an exception for Inworlds was a little bit too much work. So what they did was they rolled out this export permission. And what this means is that creators can now sell full perm items that have to stay on the grid, that cannot be exported. So that's the first big immediate change that they're going to see, is that some full perm items, which previously all full perm items could have been exported, now the merchants can say, no, you cannot export this full perm item. In the future, however, they will also plan to use this for allowing people full region exports. And that's an OR file, OAR, stands for Open Sim Archive. And what it does is save every single item on a region into a file, including the terrain and all its objects and scripts. And then you can take that whole region file to another grid and upload it, and everything is the way it was on the previous grid. It's a very quick way to move a region from one grid to another. But what happens if you have stuff on that region that's not yours? So what a filtered OR export does, it saves everything that it's allowed to save. So if you have stuff on there that's not yours, or you don't have rights to export it, there will just be an empty space there where that object used to be. Kitely already has filtered ORs, where if you want to save a region, only the parts that you're allowed to save are saved. And Kitely does the same thing for hypergrid teleports. If you're traveling the hypergrid, the only stuff you can take with you are stuff that is exportable. You can't take stuff that has to stay on the Kitely grid. So Inworld said that yes, they are planning to have OR exports at some point, and maybe other kinds of exports. And the only other kind of exports right now are the inventory exports, where you can save your whole inventory or a whole folder in your inventory to a single file. Again, very useful for taking an avatar from one grid to another. And they said that they're not looking at hypergrid connectivity right now, that they've got too much other stuff to deal with.
I can sort of understand why Inworlds might be doing this, because they are, as a closed grid, they are very much a competitor to Second Life. They initially, a lot of the people that went there, it seems to be, were attracted there because they were artists, they were creators who wanted to build things, and they could get a lot more prims and a lot more cheaper land by going to Inworlds. So it was a better platform for them. But I can also see that, with a strong creative community, they might actually want export rights so they can do the work there and then keep it offline and maybe deploy it onto other grids as needed. So, I can understand that coming from Inworlds, actually.
Right. Well, it makes a little bit more sense to me that their initial use of it will be to cut back on the number of exports that are allowed, not actually increase them. Yeah, and they're going to be rolling this out very soon, as soon as they get it tested, whereas the ore exports might come some indefinite point in the future. So if I was, and again, I make this recommendation to everybody on any closed grid, whether it's Second Life or AviWorlds or any place else, if you have a build that you care about, that you can't afford to lose, build it somewhere else and import it into the closed grid. So keep your warehouse or your building space on some place where you can make an export. That could be a local sim on a stick, or a New World Studio or Diva Distro running on your own computer. Could be a Kitely region because they have very easy exports, or a ZetaMex region, or a Dreamland region, or any other third-party hosting company that lets you make an export of the whole region. But do your building there. Then once you finish building, then you upload to your closed grid. That way you have your original backup copy is under your control. So whatever happens on that grid, you still have all your stuff. And things can happen. Even if the grid doesn't go down, even if Second Life's still up, you can still lose access to your user account. Various weird things always happen. So it's always good to have a backup, especially if you've invested a lot of time or a lot of money into the build. Build it offline and import it. Okay, and so that was Inworlds. We talked about AviWorlds. We can talk about supersized regions, and we can talk about Kitely changed its pricing.
Again, yes.
Again, yes.
Yeah,
Kitely keeps changing. So, supersized regions. In OpenSim, a couple of months ago, they added this feature called variable-sized regions, where instead of a region being the usual size, 16 square acres, 16 acres, which is the size of a Second Life region, 256 by 256 meters. You can make it any multiple. You can make it like 16, 32, 64 acres, etc., etc. So the size of 4 regions, the size of 3 regions, the size of 8 regions, the size of 1,000 regions. There's somebody with a size of variable size region, the size of 1,000 regions up there. And all this land is buildable. But your prim limits are the same as the prim limits on the original region. So you just have more land to put those prims on. This is a way to get a lot of cheap land. If you don't need a lot of prims, and it's a way to get a lot of cheap land and without any border crossings. So this is a great thing. So several vendors are offering to supersize your region at no additional cost. So if you buy a region from Swando, which is a vendor I have not written much about before, they rent regions on OS Grid and Metropolis. So if you rent a region on Swando on OS Grid, instead of making it the size of one regular region, you could make it the size of 4 regular regions at no additional cost. You still have the same number of prims. You're not going to get new magic prims out of it because it's the same server running this. But you do get more land out of it. So that's a very cool feature, and it's available from 4 vendors already. And more will be. Why the ha?
Sorry, Lapasian in chat has just said he gets his regions from McDonald's. They supersize my order for free.
I'm not sorry I teased you. So on the cats,
I'm sorry, I couldn't help but laugh when I saw that. Burst out laughing. Sorry, I interrupted you.
All right, yeah. So, and then Kitely changed its metered regions offering, which was very sad because this is the one I was using. And this is very tricky to explain because Kitely's pricing is extremely complicated. It took me, I actually had to get in touch with the Kitely CEO and have him explain it to me again before I understood what was going on. It's not as simple, $15 for 15,000 prims, and then if you want to double that to 30,000 prims, it's $30, which is the way most hosting companies right now in OpenSim do it.
Yeah.
So what they have is for $15 you get a standard region. Anybody can use it for as long as they want. You can use it for as long as you want, and it costs you $15 a month. But you used to be able to have metered regions, and everybody gets a free one, and then you can add additional ones for $1 each. And with metered regions, you pay only for the time you use it. So if you use it for an hour a month, it only costs you 20 cents a month. And the reason this was useful was, say for example, you could take your region, free region, you could put a mall on it, and premium visitors Kitely's premium account holders can visit it for free. And all you do is you sit back and you collect the money. Or you can put a museum up, or you can put up a warehouse full of stuff you build to put on other grids. And if you only visit it once in a while, this is was a very good deal. Apparently, too many people took the deal, according to Kitely.
That's your fault for promoting it. I must admit, actually, when you start talking about, 20 cents a month or something, going this way around, I mean, the admin cost of that 20 must be more than the 20 cents, as it were. I can sort of, I can see there being like a minimum charge business.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yes. So anyway, not enough people were upgrading to the premium offerings, which is the way you usually have this as a loss leader, is if a certain percentage of people upgrade, and that's enough to pay for the service. Well, I guess not enough people were upgrading it, so they got rid of the deal. So the way it works now is that you can still have your free region. You get to use it for 6 hours. After those 6 hours, you can't visit it anymore. Other premium users can still visit it, but you can't. You either have to upgrade this region to a regular pricing plan, or you have to upgrade yourself to a premium account. Now, with a premium account, it's $20 a month. You get 5 regions for $20 a month. Each region is 100,000 prims, and each region can hold 100 avatars. I mean, it's still an excellent deal. I mean, 500,000 prim regions for $20, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing to scoff at. It's the best deal right now in OpenSim or in Second Life. As far as I know, nobody in Second Life offers a better deal than that. But you do have to upgrade if you want to visit it. The only loophole left in Kitely, and I'm gonna spill the beans on this loophole until they close that too.
This is the one that gets closed next week. Yeah, right. Carry on.
This is the end of month loophole. Kitely charges based on the first of the month, and you can upgrade or downgrade at any time, and have that pricing downgrade go through to the end of the month. So that means that you can take your free region and you can upgrade it to a premium region and use it as a premium region, but you can't downgrade again until the end of the month. So if it's the last day of the month, you can take your free region, which you cannot visit anymore. You can upgrade it to like a $15 region, spend the whole day in it, and then downgrade it again to a free region. So with $15 a month, that works out to 50 cents a day. So now, if you kind of miss your window and you forget to downgrade it, you have to pay for $15 for the following month. But if you downgrade at the right time, you wind up having a region that you can use for 50 cents a day for the last couple of days of the month. So that's the one loophole there, and obviously the way that to close it is to have the billing start not on the first day of the month, but whenever you activate the billing. But that's a trickier accounting system. So they might, now that I wrote this, they might well switch.
Yeah, and it also, to be quite honest, it sounds like you'd have to have a lot of time on your hands and be very finicky to actually to try and save money that way. Really, I think.
Yeah, you have to be really dedicated to saving those few bucks. So it is a lot of work, and if you miss that window, you've missed that window. You're now paying for the whole month. So it's for people who are really, really, really thrifty.
Yeah, no, it raises all sorts of other issues actually. Like, do they, if the billing starts at midnight on the first of the month, what country is midnight?
Right.
Or what time zone's midnight? Is
Yeah.
it? You just
if you
gotta give
are
up.
that concerned about the price, for God's sakes, download the New World Studio and run it on your own computer.
Exactly. I think anybody who's
And you get as much land as you want. I mean, literally, you can have as much land as your hard drive can hold.
Yeah.
You can have thousands of regions. I mean, my drive is 100, was 1,000 gig. It's what's one big next up from gigabytes? Terabytes. I've got a terabyte hard drive.
Yeah.
I can probably hold like all of Second Life in there.
I was wandering around. I logged into I hypergridded into Hyperica the other day, looking around at your new little.
It hasn't been updated yet. We're doing a
portals.
massive redesign. It's
Yeah.
going for a new Mediterranean look. But
It's got all those lovely little hypergates in it, though. Although they're all marked the same destination, most of them. But never mind. It's coming along. Put it that way.
There's 120 gates that have to be manually updated. So we're switching to like a automated system, but it's in the works.
Yeah. Looks good anyway.
It should be different destinations. They shouldn't all go to the same destination.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what else? You mentioned E3. I just wanted to give a quick summary that we have a new couple of new hardware announcements, but for the most part, E3 was all about video games. There was some new video games announced for the Oculus Rift. Sony's Project Morpheus had some demos. But since I don't cover games, this wasn't of that much interest to me.
I'm the same. I was clicking on links early in the week while Feedly was still going, and then by the time Feedly had given up, I got back. There were just so many. I was like, I'm not interested in all these games.
Right.
Use the same Oculus or the same. The same hardware, we cover the hardware because it's interfacing tools. But
but apparently there's some really, really nice games out there. For people who are interested in this, go to Road to VR. Their coverage was really, really very thorough. I have a podcast that I subscribe to on Stitcher, the Revs Road to VR podcast. That was really great overviews of what's happening on E3, and I strongly recommend it. The two big hardware news was Control VR. Yeah. They hit their Kickstarter goal, which was for $250,000, and they're still going. And Control VR is really cool. It's a little glove-based system, so you can actually move your fingers. You can do sign language in World. Very, very cool. A lot of delicate stuff you can do. Obviously, you can shoot guns and kill people, but you can do a lot of other better things as well. And then another hardware announcement was the CMOR, CMOAR virtual reality headset, which is something that works with headphones. Smartphones. It's another one of those shells that you drop a smartphone into.
Yeah.
This one has a little bit more meat to it, so they're pricing it higher than other headsets. So we'll see if that one goes anywhere. And so, aside from what's happening with High-Fidelity, that is pretty much it for me. Just some small briefs.
Right, okay, I'm just typing in. They're asking for links, so I'm just saying all at hypergridbusiness.com.
Of course.
Well, you get to the homepage. It's pretty obvious. You've got all the latest posts in one list, so But
it's all on the front page.
Just go to the front page, and you'll see all the things we've been referencing so far. Okay, now High-Fidelity. I think this is good because Philip. He's been at the Silicon Valley Virtual World Conference. He's been at a VR conference. He's been all over the place recently in real world, and if we go back to virtual world's best practices and stuff in avatar format too. But he's always been delivering like keynotes or sort of addresses, and the thing I got to on Moses in the week, which I thought was fascinating, was I think he forgot he wasn't in Second Life because he's moaning about they haven't made his new avatar properly yet. But he was sitting there, he was giving a presentation, but he had a small group of people who were asking him the right kind of serious questions.
Yep.
And it was interactive in the good old way Second Life used to be. He would sit there, there'd be a few people around, there'd be putting points to him, and at one point actually in the talk he says, some of these questions are great, some people have actually been summing up for me and using better words than I can come up with. I'll quote I'll quote them. So it had this really great participatory feel. Some of the Q&A stuff was questions given to him in advance. Some of it near the end was ad-libbed. It was in the local chat, which we couldn't see, but it was a nice sort of continuous thing. And for the first time, he sort of seemed to be, willing to improvise with the Q&A. He was addressing, he obviously had clear answers to a lot of questions, talking about the economy, the exchange, virtual currencies, security, and all these were responses to particular questions. So, I thought it was a really rewarding session. And, we're actually going to be showing this clip for the first time on the channel immediately after this program. We've already got it up at slartist.com as an embed video on demand, so it's not new. We moved fast to get it up. But if you haven't seen it yet, you can watch it after this program or go to Slartist at your leisure to see it. But it did raise an awful lot of things, and I remember sending the link to you and said, looks interesting, and then up comes this blog, which is like your summary, basically, of everything there. So if you go through your summary, and then we'll sort of discuss, maybe intervene on various points as they happen. So
first of all, my primary interest is business. So I was focusing on the business model. And so I had him on play and rewind to get these quotes as accurate as I could to figure out what exactly is the business model of High-Fidelity. And from what he's saying, from what he said here, they're going to be giving away the server software and the viewer software. It's Apache license, which is an open source license. It's a similar license to the license that OpenSim uses for its server software. The Apache license allows you to build derivative products that are proprietary. It means you can take the open source software, package it up with your own stuff, and sell it as traditional closed software. And some companies are already doing this with OpenSim, for example. IBM and Hyergrid both had their own packaged versions of OpenSim for quite a bit of money. The Real Extent people branched off OpenSim several years ago and have built several commercial products on top of their own long lost branch of the family.
Yes, it's way off center, isn't it? Yeah.
And these kind of licenses, I just looked it up, are very popular with business users. So developers like having the most freewheeling kind of open source licenses, where if you do anything else with it, whatever you do also has to be open source. That's the GPL license. But actual company users prefer Apache licenses. They prefer the BSD license or the MIT license, which allows them to keep their add-ons proprietary, because they don't want to have to build something sexy and then have to share it with all their competitors. So their choice of license is interesting. It seems to indicate that they want to go after corporate and enterprise users who want to keep build on top of it than keep the stuff to themselves. And in fact, they did say that this was going to be a self-contained product. So you can download the software, and you can run it behind your own firewall as your own grid. The way you used to be able to do with Second Life Enterprise before they shut it down, and the way you can do it now with OpenSim. The way that they're going to make money is obviously, there's not much money in giving away software. The way they're going to make money off of this is through location registrations, currency, and marketplace. Location registrations are kind of like your URL, or I want to go to San Francisco grid, except that he didn't really go into detail as to how this would work, because we already have URLs, domains in the world. And what is to stop you from just using a domain name for your grid the way OpenSim grids do?
I wonder if it's an addressing thing, because on that chart he made a big thing out of the namespace.
Again, same problem in OpenSim. They just use domain names with a little number behind it. So there's no real. I mean, yeah, it's you can make a sexier name. You don't have to use a domain name if you have your own namespace, but you have to pay extra for it. You already own your domain name. You've already bought it, $10. So if he charges a lot of money for these locations, then people are just going to say, why are we bothering to spend the money on it when we can just use our $10 domains? And if he charges very little money for it, so it's like competitive with domain names, then he's not going to make a lot of money from it.
Unless it's a ploy for, I think of the web and domain names, right? If there was, like Second Life has its slurls and Hyergrid has its HD dot whatevers, if virtuality takes off in the way he envisages, then it might be, imagine you, instead of .coms, you might have something like, San Francisco .world.
Right.
Maybe without the WW or whatever like that. And it will become a sort of domain system in its own right, and people running virtual installations will want to have a domain name there. Now, as you say, if it's cheap enough, you won't make much money, but it's all a matter of scale. I mean, if you have, if you have 1 million people all wanting a virtual domain, you've got, a million micropayments. Whereas if it's only 100, yes, it isn't worth your while. Yeah. So I suspect he's thinking the long view here. He's very optimistic.
Maybe if it's cheap enough and convenient enough, or if it's built into the system, if it's built into the system and very expensive, people will just fork the software so that they can just use a domain name.
Yeah.
So if it's built into the system as cheap or cheaper than a domain name and very convenient, yeah, okay. I can't see this in the beginning as making them a lot of money, but okay, a little bit of revenues. Then the other thing is the virtual currency, which he wants to have it to be as stable as the Linden dollar, but as secure as Bitcoin. Whereas, it's kind of a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. But I'm not really clear how that's going to work.
You mentioned something about, unlike, say, the Linden dollar, it would have inflationary, deflationary sort of values.
He said it would be like the Linden dollar. I listened to this several times. And unlike the Bitcoin is inherently deflationary because of the way that it's architected, and which makes it very bad for an economy because prices keep going down with if you're paying in Bitcoin. So it makes sense for you to hold onto your Bitcoin instead of spending it. It's not a transactional currency. The way real world currencies work is that they're created at the point of economic growth. Most people think governments print currencies, but in fact, new currency is created when somebody borrows money from a bank, like to open up a new business, to build a house, or get a college degree. Because when you borrow money from the bank, whoever deposited the money in the bank still has their money, and you who borrowed the money now also has that money. So that money just doubled.
Yeah, well, this is banking for you, isn't it?
That's the way the banking system works, and this is the way capitalism works, and this is why capitalism has been such an engine of economic growth. This is like the least understood part about capitalism, is that banks create money by lending it out to people who buy cars, houses, and who start businesses. Those are the three main reasons why people borrow money. So basically, these are three forms of economic activity. So as our economy grows, so does our money supply. And then the government just prints whatever is needed to keep up with this. With a currency like Linden dollars, there's a careful system in place to balance the outgo and the ingo of the Linden dollars to keep it in an even keel. And if you're running a large video game like World of Warcraft or something like that, you would have people in world economists keeping track of this to make sure that you don't get spiraling inflation or deflation. And so he's planning to have some kind of mechanism as well in his currency to keep it level and steady, so it can be used as a transactional in-world currency. The part that I don't understand is that he's going to be paying people in this currency for doing peer-to-peer processing for this virtual world platform. And if he's giving out this currency for free, how is he going to make money on it? Maybe he'll make it up in volume, like you said before.
Yeah, and I suppose if it's back to, he's saying something about, we need these developers and things, and we'll be paying them out of our own pockets. So presumably there's he's planning some kind of investment capital to kickstart that. So
the thing is that it's not scalable. As more people come in and do peer-to-peer processing for other worlds, they're going to be making more money in free currency. So that they're going to be spending on stuff that eventually somebody's going to want to convert back into real dollars. So
if I get the equivalent of a free viewer software, be it the web version or the standalone version, because he did point out that, and free server software, because the every installation having a server, is important to the structure by the sound of it. Then when he's talking about things like the currency and whatever, and running that from a central base, just because you get the Apache license or whatever and you can build your own, does it presuppose that he's thinking that the currency it will be tied to a monetary system that they control?
Yeah, which is that's the other thing of it. If you have your own server, like with OpenSim, there are some grids that use a common currency like OMC, but there's plenty of grids that use their own currency. Inworld has its own currency. Avanation has its own currency. Kitely has its own currency. So even though that there's a multi-grid currency available, a lot of grids prefer to use their own. And since the software is open source, anybody could pull out the part that connects to the High-Fidelity currency and put their own currency in instead. So that is another aspect of it as well.
I'm just thinking of it in the sense that it couldn't happen, but if you go back in time, and imagine that the people that brought the web online also brought PayPal online simultaneously, and the web was free, but the monetary system is controlled by PayPal or something. And that will never happen, of course, because they came through at different times on top of one on top of the other.
It makes sense that they would do that. So, and PayPal is a very successful company; it makes a lot of money. So, if you're going to be the PayPal of the new virtual metaverse, this is a great thing. And also, if you can be the Amazon of the virtual of the marketplace of the metaverse, that's also a great thing. And those are all high growth areas that are definitely going to be very profitable. My question is, is the kind of company that can make a really good virtual world. The same kind of company that can make a really good payment system, which is the same kind of company that can make a really good shopping marketplace.
And that's a really good question.
Yeah, I mean that nails it on the head, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose at the end of the day, it depends how, this does seem to be a very cooperative effort with a lot of players, and maybe it will just depend on how much is delegated to people who are experts in a given field.
Yeah, but
if you were to just take the virtual shopping end of things and look at Second Life versus the Second Life marketplace, I think you have an answer there. That running a good virtual world does not mean running a successful and effective virtual marketplace.
No.
And the obvious comparison is Amazon, which is whatever the experience people bring into, say, the Second Life marketplace, and when you can't do the kinds of searches in the Second Life marketplace that are really easy in Amazon, then there's your answer.
The last time we had a company that had all three pieces in one was AOL.
AOL, yeah.
And the only reason they were able to keep all three pieces was because they had a walled garden, which is what Second Life also has.
Mm-hmm. And they were the first show in town.
Since High-Fidelity is open source, not a walled garden, he specifically mentioned Apache, the Apache server, and the Hyergrid as models for how this is going to be architected. Then they will have a three times as hard a task. They will have to build a virtual world that is competitive, that is better than OpenSim. They will have to build a virtual currency that is better than, say, it's easy. Okay, this one I give them. The OMC virtual currency in OpenSim currently sucks. Anything would be better than that. But they'd also have to build a marketplace better than the Kitely market. And the Kitely market is doing really, really well right now. But also, they will have to be ahead of any other competitor that's going to come along in this space once they see the growth potential here. And that's going to be a much, much more challenging issue because they will have to defend not on one front, but on three different fronts. And two of which fronts are going to be critical to their business model, which is where the money is. So imagine, say you have High-Fidelity, which takes in money from, say, the marketplace, and uses the money for two things, virtual world development and marketplace development. And they're competing against somebody else who uses the virtual world for free, because the software is free, and puts all their money from a marketplace into marketplace development. They're going to be able to get twice as far as High-Fidelity is, because they're not having to use that money to cover their virtual world development costs.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, they'll take the free bits and then make their own money.
Right.
Yeah.
The only way that High-Fidelity can overturn that is by having a lot of open source developers donate code to their software. And considering that this is a venture-funded private company, I'm not seeing a lot of people jumping up to volunteer to work for free.
No, I don't think so. I mean, he did say in the talk that they have about 100 people working with them, testing at the moment, and they run through the old Coffee and Power workbook system for sending out tasks. And yes, they're paying them. I mean, they've got Chris Collins, who used to be at Linden with
different Chris Collins than Chris Collins.
Not Philip. In fact, I was
so confused when I heard that name.
If I ever get the two of them on the same show, it's going to be a real nightmare. Oh, you're going to be Philip Chris, and you're going to be Chris. Yes, sort of thing. I think it has.
God forbid they hit it off and run away together. together.
Well, no, I think I seem to remember somewhere in history that actually happened. Philippe and Chris Collins were both on the same thing, and they had to negotiate a reference point for who was who, which was so they certainly know each other. But yes, sort of, yeah. But clearly, they are slowly but surely adding people to the team because you can email them and ask to be put on the alpha testing list, and they assess your hardware capabilities and downtime that you can contribute, server time and stuff. So, but it's all very it seems to be a long way off to me, but every time I've seen Philip do this thing in the last couple of months, in one way or another, only a day goes by and the demonstration material seems to be a whole lot better. And I think he often says it was at least a year away, which I can understand. But in some circumstances, you'd think it was several years away.
Right. Now, the other thing, two more things that I got out of this was how it's going to be different from OpenSim and Second Life. So in that you're going to have puppetry. You're going to be able to use your hands and your feet.
Yeah.
And they already have support for a bunch of hardware devices.
Yeah.
Like Control VR and Razer Hydra and so forth. That lets you use your hands and feet in the world, which is very nice. It is an improvement. It is something that's nice to see. But the trade-off is it's all mesh, so there's no in-world building tools. You have to build everything in Maya or Blender, import it in. Once it's in, you can kind of move it into position. So I don't think he really understands how valuable it is to have simple in-world building tools for people inside virtual worlds that are more than just buying something and putting it into place.
Well, I got the impression that there would be building tools. There's a bit where he referenced, which sort of took me by surprise, that there'd be a kind of... he was actually talking of things like, Oculus Rift and Leap Motion and things, and saying, if somebody's coming in as a viewer and wants to view things, Oculus Rift is all well and good if that's their thing and they want to wear that helmet. But, if you want to manipulate putty, or do certain things at the same time, you just can't do that. For example, you can't have eyeball tracking while you're wearing the blasted helmet.
Right. Yeah.
So he was then saying there will be, all these will be plugins, and there'll be different tools you do for different operations. So you might use the Oculus Rift to come into the web version as a traveler, a viewer. But if you wanted to do serious building, I think I'm right in saying he actually mentioned if you want to do serious building or things like that, you will come into a standalone version. So he did seem to make the distinction there slightly.
Well, no. The distinction there was between a web viewer and a standalone viewer, not between an Oculus Rift and non-Oculus Rift.
No. It was a viewer distinction.
So downloadable viewer.
Yeah, but he also used the hardware as a demonstration of, some hardware will be viewing tools, but you won't want to use them for creation.
Yeah. Now, he did say, and I've heard this in a couple different speeches, that with hardware tools like the Razer Hydra or the Control VR, it's a lot easier to build in World. He said you can do it with a mouse and keyboard, but it's trickier. But then he also said that it's going to be that you're only going to have the ability to position things. So yes, moving stuff around into position, rotating it and stuff, that it is nice to be able to have spatial awareness and motion that's natural. Yes. So people can come in, and he said they'll be able to start building stuff in 5 minutes. But he seems to be using the word building to mean positioning and rotating, as opposed to like creating and texturing an object from scratch, because he said at another point that will be done offline in Blender or Maya or another 3D program. So this is where all the other virtual worlds, most of the other virtual worlds do that. Like Blue Mars did that, Otherverse does that, where you build in 3D, certain people are allowed to import it into Inworld. And that means you can't have collaborative building like you can in...
Didn't he didn't imply that there's a kind of double system of work here. There is the mesh and there are the voxels. And the voxels are part of the render.
A display mechanism for seeing things at a distance.
Yeah, but I believe you can actually create voxels independently in mesh, even though they've sort of become a sort of mesh.
Okay.
A bit like Minecraft does, I think. You can literally build at the voxel level.
Oh, I thought I heard him say the opposite, that it's not like Minecraft where you build at the voxel level, but you have a mesh object, and once you get further away from it, in the viewer, it just turns into a little voxel to make it easier to display a lot of objects at a distance, an infinite number of objects you can now see that are far away.
We'd have to find out more, I think. Yeah, that is certainly the case too. As a rendering technology, it's a bit like Avatar Imposters. From a distance, you just won't see as much detail. It increases as you get close to it.
I've heard him say that in a couple of different places, because I was playing that over and over again. Also, you have to say that people, when they're speaking off the cuff, you can't hold them exactly to every single thing that they say, because he may have been meaning to say can and came out can't, or vice versa. And so we don't have that yet. So we're just guessing right now based on in my case, based on 2 speeches that I heard about this.
Well, if I can interrupt our chain of thought here, in fact, we're going to have to start watching our time. But we've got Serene Jewel in the live stream chat, and she says, "Have you all seen this?" And she's actually put in a link to makehuman.org. Have you come across this, Maria, or Tara, for that matter?
Is that a video game that runs on the Oculus?
No. It's I think there may be the connections there, but basically it's a system that I think you can plug into.
Oh, it's an open source tool for making 3D characters.
Yeah, I think you can plug it into Blender, for example, and it actually, it includes a way of coding facial expressions.
Oh, very cool. And the results are CC0 licensed. That's public domain licenses. Excellent. Nice.
Right. Yeah, I have actually. I know on the MetaWorld News channel I've run a couple of clips that reference Make Human, but I can't admit I don't know.
Okay. I haven't checked that out.
Okay, I will check that out as well. Thank you.
Again, I think it's back to the offline. Creating, because if it's a plugin that works with Blender, for example, it's obviously to do something and then later be uploaded. But it is getting, I'm getting, in the techie sphere and stuff like that. I certainly heard it mentioned a lot, put it that way. Right. It's not so much in the public sphere at the moment.
Now, the other thing I'm very confused about with High-Fidelity is the peer-to-peer system, and I've heard him talk about it before, and I heard him talk about it again today. And I'm still not clear at all about how this works. So with High-Fidelity, you still have the server software. You download it, you install it on your server, just like you download OpenSim software, install it on a server. You can run it at home. You can run it in a desktop. You can run it in a data center, and it runs the world. Then you access the world via clients. Now, I'm not exactly sure where the peer-to-peer system comes in. Is it where the clients do more of the work for the server? Is it, now I understand the most famous example of peer-to-peer is something like BitTorrent, where people share files from one another and you pass the files along to whoever's next in a chain and so forth. And there's no central place where these files are stored, so there's no central place to shut down if the authorities come trying to stamp this network out. Or something like Skype, where the telephone communications happen between the people directly instead of going through a central server and back out again. So it's a little faster, more distributed. But so I'm not really understanding how that would work, and also. I understand why he's needing the extra computing power, because he's got the hand motion stuff that you have to generate and process. So it's going to take a little bit of extra time, and if he's got higher graphics.
I think that one of the key things he said in very simple terms at the very beginning, before we knew much more details, is this thing of getting latency down to under 100 milliseconds, where you don't notice. And I think the idea here is that to really partake in High-Fidelity, you really have to have the server component and the viewer component. Whether they can work standalone, I don't know. It's too far early. But I think the idea is that your machine will be a contributory server whilst you're online and in world, and possibly even when you're not. In other words, you can keep the server side running when you're not even in the world and help contribute.
Yeah, the way BitTorrent works. Yeah.
But I think the key here is the latency target, because if they can crack it so all the information is traveling at 100 under 100 milliseconds, as I understand it. We get very techy here. I'm not the one to ask, but I think the idea is that there'll be, everybody who uses this system in this virtual world will in fact be contributing processing power to the whole thing going on. Obviously, there will be aspects of it that have to be on central servers, because I don't know how much can be done through a distributed system. Presumably there still needs to be databases or something like that containing asset inventories or whatever that are permanently around, not on just anybody's individual machine.
Yeah, especially if you've got web-based viewers that can't do anything at all except look at things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's got to be someplace that stores it to look at, and it seems like it's going to be stored on server software, the way the OpenSim does it. And he specifically mentioned a hypergrid model, which is the same as the web model. I mean, in fact he pointed to Apache as the way that he sees this going forward. And with Apache and with OpenSim, the way it works is you get the server software. The server is a central server. You run it at home or on a data center, usually in a data center. And then people can access that server to get your web pages or get your grid regions to see them and interact with them. And you own that software and you own that particular world. So so everybody who uses OpenSim, when they have their own grid, it's their own grid. Like when they have their own website, it's their website. It's not owned by, the website company. It's owned by them. So unlike Linden Lab, where Linden Lab runs all the land, it has all the centralized servers, it has everything.
If I think of forgetting the virtual world for a minute though, if I think of a web page, for example, and I own the server, or at least control the server that the web pages are on, the websites on, whatever, but I have, and it's basically static, but I might have widgets on my pages that summarize are actually active because they've got my latest Twitter feeds or stuff like that on them, or I might have an iframe that contains things like in web page drawing tools, interactive tools, and those could be run on my own server as JavaScript, or they could be widgets I'm taking from a central system, like a service provider like Twitter is or something, that allows me to get a widget to access those things and my customers or viewers to access them from my website. So although my website is totally under my control, I've got things embedded in it that are accessing a central server somewhere independent of my website. Right. And I'm wondering if the idea here is you have a virtual world structure that has a groundwork of its own, but is that then interacts with various services that could plug into it, be they facilities or money making systems or whatever.
Yeah, that sounds like what he's doing. Yes, that he's going to have a centralized system for money and for marketplace. The way that I have my website has, for example, a Discus common system on it, or I might use a PayPal payments on it if I ever sell anything, for example. So it would be the same, could be something similar, or it could be more tightly integrated, kind of like built right into it. So that will be interesting to see. Very interesting to see. and then again, you could have client-side programming. Like you mentioned on the website, you could be running JavaScript, which runs on the viewer. So the viewer's doing all the work. That is definitely something that some virtual worlds do to minimize the load on the server, is to transfer a lot of the work to the viewer. So, for example, a lot of physics that you see actually happen on the viewer side. So what you're seeing and what somebody else is seeing may not be identical. So if you're seeing people dance, the actual dance moves that people are making in front of you might be different from what the guy next to you is seeing, because they're both rendered locally.
Yeah, that would be fatal, I think, to be honest, because you'd lose the community immersive factor that virtual worlds are all about. You know,
not if you don't, not if it's something minor that you don't really care about.
Now that happens in Second Life.
We see that during dancing. Yeah, synchronized dancing.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned thinking. Or for example,
and just take the example of you're seeing yourself as a cloud, and we're seeing your avatar.
There are millions of examples.
Millions of examples.
Say, for example, you throw a rock. Okay, what you do is you tell the viewers, I threw a rock from this direction with this speed, and let the viewers figure out where it's going to land, and assume that it lands in roughly the same place for everybody. So instead of having to do it on a central server to update the position of that rock every second and then send out that update to everybody. And then
sounds like if the tree fell in the forest to me.
So that's an example of offloading some of the work to the viewer, but it's not an example. But it's not a peer-to-peer example. And it's not anything you would pay the viewer to do. You would just make the viewer do it. You wouldn't have to pay them for it. So so that's why I'm really confused about that aspect of it altogether.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the at least a portion of this program we've been discussing and actually send it over to them for Chris Collins and for comments. Actually, Laps actually mentioned in the chat, of course.
They have to have them in world.
I don't want to crash the sim. I've been thinking about arranging something like that. We will just go somewhere else for the occasion. Same with Ebbe. But it's interesting. Lap says something about sort of coming from real networks. Hi-Fi is kind of a signature. What I did find interesting here, I mean, as I said, started talking not on this session, but originally talking about Hi-Fi, about this latency target, and also doing away with the mouse seems to be his favorite thing at the moment. But I've spoken to him in the past, and of course. The work he did with real networks on before Second Life was all about compression and audio in that case. But I once actually randomly got into, we're making conversation, and I remembered image compression and fractal image compression that was around for a while. And it was, it brought file sizes down to something microscopic. And it retained fractal data, which basically is rebuild information. So it could recreate the picture from this fractal information, and it could sometimes rebuild the picture at higher resolution than the original had been scanned, because every time you zoomed into it, it redrew itself at high definition using the fractal building components.
Oh, very cool.
And it's very odd, because when he was talking about the voxels in the mesh, I thought of this as rather similar. You've got mesh in the foreground by and large, and you've got like a tapestry of voxels creating the illusion of stuff further away, and yet when you move towards them, they will redraw and redefine themselves in higher and higher resolution each step you take towards them. Mm-hmm. And I thought that is a great approach, because remember when Lyndon Lamb brought in the interesting viewer. The theory being that it reses stuff that's important to you and close to you first, and then distance stuff later. But of course, it is still rendering all that 3D information into my graphics card. Mm-hmm. Even depending on my draw distance, it's all eventually being resed. And once it's resed, it's there in the distance, and I can walk up to it, but it's already there, if you see what I mean, right. Clogging up the graphics. Whereas if the world actually resolved itself as you move through it, and simply it looked high definition from a distance, but simply became clearer as you move towards it, then that sort of system sounds very compelling to me, because it would take a lot of the load of anything that isn't in your actual close environment, but still look just as good. especially if the foreground is mesh. But we will have to discover this. I think
it's probably time we needed to wrap here.
That's just what I was going to say, because we started a bit late, but we're already approaching the 2-hour point. So we'll have to investigate this further. So coming up as soon as we go off air, if you're watching us live, you will be able to actually see the talk that we're actually talking about. And if you're watching this in replay, just go to slartist.com, where you can find video on demand of the talk itself. And I'm sure this is going to go on and on. It's really fascinating, and I'll see what we can do about getting some authoritative replies to our discussions.
We can just wait. It's all going to come out soon.
It'll come out in the end, but it's intriguing because, we're observers, as it were, and we're coming up with all these sort of a different angle from those who are actually partaking in putting it together. So maybe they'll find it useful feedback. Okay, so let's do a wrap. I don't think there's if you want anything else for Maria, just go to hybridgridbusiness.com and scroll through the 100 posts of the week. There was an awful lot there. We probably missed a few. And likewise, go to my Twitter feed at twitter.com/malburns, where there are various other posts too. But we've covered a lot this week. Talking of Brazil and kicking balls around, we will be with oddly enough, we're going to be without Anna Macmillan for at least a couple of weeks, because apparently every 4 years at a certain time she takes 4 weeks off. I don't know what her involvement or the fascination is, but
I like the sound of that. I really like the sound of that.
The World Cup puts Anna Macmillan out of action for 3 or 4 weeks, or however long the darn thing lasts. She will be back, but it won't be till after they've kicked lots of balls. Tara, wrap up from you. Any other thoughts?
Well, just my focus will continue to be here the next couple of days, putting the finishing touches on my SL11B exhibit, and it's Spellbound number 8, if you care to make a note.
I'm going to let you into a little secret here. Yes, we'll give out the Earl. I did actually film a bit of Tara's entrance, but it was silent footage, so I haven't really got anything.
You've got the bug now, don't you, Mal?
But last night I came up with
That's great.
This. I have this, me and Tara, a little secret here. We have this thing of coming up with it, or I have this thing of coming up with instant limericks to entertain us. And the one I came up with yesterday while we were fiddling around on Tara's build, I'm going to actually recite it. I'm sure Tara won't. Oh, well, why not?
Go for it.
An avatar stressed, in need of unwind, searched the grid, looking to find a place of seclusion without much intrusion, and discovered a secret garden of the mind, which is the name of Tara.
Clap. That's kind of like a haiku limerick. That was really nice.
I do damn things. They roll off my tongue, sometimes rather badly, but
no, that sounded great. That sounded great. Stop.
They do pour out, so I thought you'd enjoy that one. Bit of poetic license from yours truly.
I'll tell you what, I've got footage of my friends and I playing games, bowling, trying to figure out what to do. You wind up taking such random footage, it's funny. But
the permanent outtakes department, you end up with too much. You can never make an outtake program anyway.
Well, speaking of outtakes, that's my wrap-up. I'm working on the TBM, the Black and Mirror outtake blooper roll from seasons 1 and 2. So
long awaited.
Oh, please. I need to talk to Safia. She made me give her all the footage. because I had to clear some space off, and
does
now
she-
I need some of it back.
I presume she wants to censor the blooper roll.
Oh, not censor. I very much hope that she'll go through it with me. I want her input, but it's already pretty hilarious, I'll tell you, whether you were there or not. So that's my wrap up.
Yeah. There's quite a few outtakes of a certain feline in one episode, aren't there?
Yeah, those are one of the sets of clips I'm going to ask for back. I guess I should mention also the Virtual Ability art exhibit, Project Freedom Again, which you had already mentioned. That would be my other wrap. That finally has been released, so that's good.
Yeah, and as I told you before the show, that was immediately after Philip's talk, you'll be able to see the Pets film of the Virtual Ability event.
Well, it's not so much that it's my film,
Right.
but the event itself was really extraordinary. Excuse me for interrupting.
Yeah. So that's coming up too. So in fact, you've got another couple of hours of exciting stuff on the channel here. And of course, the whole week in review will be published tomorrow with all our Arts Mission and Destination clips. And Happy Hunting somewhere as well. Happy Hunting's already up.
Every week, every Friday.
Yeah, Happy Hunting's already up on Metaworld 1. I know it's on Metaworld 1, the Lifestyle channel, but I think it's up here too somewhere, so we'll see. Yeah,
Great current hunts. Great.
I'm doing so much, I keep forgetting where I'm putting everything.
SL11B, that's where everything's going.
Yeah, and if you can't wait to see the Freedom Project and you're watching live, Lepaisian has just put the slightest oil in there as well, so you can go straight to it.
Our virus database has been updated.
Oh, hi, Mouse Answering Machine.
I thought you would like to hear that. Yeah, every time I hear that voice, I think of Saffron Knightley. It sounds very similar voice accent. I don't know why. Oh, and that's it. I will mention this too. The Relay for Light after the birthday exhibit is over, and basically this isn't next week but the week after. I'll be filming, or maybe Petlove will help, or somebody I don't know, but if nobody else does, I'm going to be filming 3 times a day that week for the talk sessions in the Safia hosts 2 a day, and
they'll be great. Terralyn Gravoy has
there are about 3 a day. We've done them in previous years, and they're always really interesting. So
for like all week. Yeah.
But immediately after that, we're going to be working even more heavily on the Relay for Life, a big weekend, which I always call the telethon weekend, as if it's all about a telethon and nothing else, which is not. It's about far more, but we do run a telethon over the weekend, and we're still looking for people to join in with it. If you're involved in broadcasting, filming in any way, we could use your help. You might want to be a commentator on the desk, take an hour-long stint there every so often. You might want to come on the film crew to be on the camera person for an hour or two at various intervals. All sorts of things that, if you've got any experience in that field, will be very useful. So we are looking for you. You can let me know Inworld as Mal Burns writer, or any other way you have contacted me for that matter. Or you can contact Saffron Knightley Inworld. That's SAFRA, and the surname is Knightley. And oh Lord, is it KN? Or is it N? No, I think it's just
It's
N.
an N, yeah.
Yeah. Is night as in the opposite of day with an LY on the end. And yes, for some reason the browser has just opened up of its own accord. Why would it do that? Right, okay. So, yes, that's all good news then. And I guess I'm going to kill it here, and we'll be back next week, of course.
Don't kill it.
We were hoping to be joined this week by Fleet 2, who, of course, is one of the Chris Collinses, to find out a little more about the Open Sim Community Convention and partake in the conversation. But apparently she's away or something. I may have actually forgotten her. She was booked to come on.
She and Honor, they're probably over in like Yugoslavia by now.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I don't know whether Flute goes in for kicking balls, but I mean certainly Honor does. Okay. Well, whatever they're doing, they're not here. But maybe we'll try and get her back next week, and maybe I can see if we can get somebody from High-Fidelity on to give us a little bit more, even if it means relocating. We'll see. No promises. We'll try. So with that, we'll leave you. If you're watching this in replay, you're probably at slartist.com anyway, but if you can see this show in replay at any time by going to slartist.com, that's SLARTIST.com, and you'll get to the homepage there and you'll see the Inworld review clearly listed, and you can watch it at your leisure, video on demand style. And the show will be also in the Week in Review when it goes up tomorrow as well. So, with that, thanks for watching. Hope we've been interesting. I think we have. I was interested in myself. I don't know about you.
It's always interesting. Always interesting.
Exactly.
The stuff you guys come up with, I'll tell you. No, it's very interesting. I wanted to say earlier that we needed, like, the son of Philip to figure out how to have a currency that would cross all grids and be viable. Maybe, son of Philip and PayPal. Anyway, that's my last comment. Bye.
Yeah, indeed. We want so much. We can but hope it comes. Okay, thank you everybody, and we're going to switch back to the normal channel programming and Philip's talk right now.